Telling you firsthand right now, everything you see online is fake. I have an embarrassing confession. I have never been eaten out. I am getting a divorce. Get ready with me for Valentine's Day. I need to look so hot tonight. So this is really hard to share, but we've decided to split up. Oh, you thought I meant Cody. No. My split ends. And I've patented with Kerastase to show you exactly how I'm gonna do it. You don't need a man on Valentine's Day. But what you do need is a bomb lip combo.
Okay, take a seat because I'm excited to dive into this one. And this is one that we really need to talk through. So it all starts with mascara and 44 million people watching one video arguing over if her eyelashes were real in this one viral video.
On with the Mikayla mascara drama. If you aren't familiar with Mikayla, she's a makeup TikToker with 14.4 million followers. Well, she's getting a lot of backlash over a recent mascara video she made for L'Oreal. In the video, Mikayla can be seen putting on mascara and her eyelashes go from this to this. But then the video cuts and she says that she applies a second layer, and her eyelashes suddenly look like this. Here's a side-by-side, and fans are calling her out because they think that she applied fake lashes in between the cuts.
That right there, that's the starting point. Because we move into years later with her secretly holding a spare key to her own husband's apartment just in case he overdosed and no one else could get to him on time. But there's a whole lot to cover in between those two moments, including an eating disorder that she hid behind a full face glam of makeup for years. There's her marriage that started in a sober living facility. Then there's her divorce announcement where she looked her audience dead in the camera and asked them, please, do not pick a side. And then we can't forget about the fact that 6 weeks after that divorce, where she said, don't pick sides, she then started dating the boy who loved her in high school, saying he was the first person who ever made her feel calm in her whole body. And on the surface, this story can seem like it's all about a beauty influencer who is uber famous. But to me, as a counselor, I don't think this is really a story about a beauty influencer at all, even though that is part of her story and part of her identity. As a counselor, I see something different. I think this is a story more about what happens when a woman spends her entire career being paid to look like she has it all together, who has felt the need to perform for millions of people, and what her body, her nervous system does the second that nobody is asking her to perform anymore. Or when the cameras go off, the behind the screen, the behind the camera, the psychology of it all. I think that this is what that story is really about. So if you haven't guessed who I'm talking about Mikayla Nogueira. So let's jump into the psychology behind the name and behind the brand. Okay, first, let's try to picture her before any of this happened, before she became this big, huge beauty influencer that she is now.
You got chubby cheeks? Or maybe you want a facelift? Maybe you want to look like this. Contour is the answer. You gotta put on your foundation first. I'm taking my LA Girl Pro Concealer because we ain't no rich bitch when we're using that cheap shit. Right, I'll do another tutorial. Calm down. This tutorial is gonna be for you if you got that crusty ass, nasty ass crease and concealer underneath your eyes. First of all, you gotta smooth out those lines. Hyaluronic acid is what does that. I use Peter Thomas Roth, the water drenched line. Even though this girl right here got the weirdest ass, smallest ass lips ever, you still wanna see my lip combo.
So picture this. Mikayla is this Massachusetts girl with an accent that's so thick that you could cut it with a knife. She started out by sitting in front of her camera, doing makeup reviews, like she's talking to you just across the kitchen table, almost talking to the camera like she's talking to her best friend. She didn't filter her opinions. She didn't use a corporate beauty brand voice. And if a product was just okay, she told you that it was just okay. And that honesty that she displayed in the beginning, it was what made her blow up. It created that trust between her and her audience. It wasn't about the makeup skills. She created trust with people by being real. And that allowed people to trust her in a way that you trust the one friend who will actually tell you the truth about that dress that might not look the best. You know what I mean? That one friend. She created that type of relationship with her audience. So she built up this honest, almost friendship type of connection with her audience. But now here's the detail that I need you to think about and that I need you to hold on to. So in 2021, Mikayla posted a video that straight up called out other mascara brands for a sneaky trick that she recognized them doing. She called them out for using false lashes in their own ads to make the product look way more powerful than it actually is. She looked into a camera and posted the video calling them out directly, publicly, and over her own platform. And I need you to take note of that because in a few minutes, I'm going to tell you why that fact right there is such a big deal in Mikayla's story. So let's fast forward to January 2023.
Thank you so much for 14 million and Happy New Year. Chorizo, show them what we did. Thank you so much, guys. We are doing the 14 million giveaway. Happy New Year. I really wanted to make this special. The support you guys show me, everything you do for me, the way you show up for me with all my videos. I truly love you.
Mikayla is sitting with her over 14 million followers. She secured massive brand deals at this point. She became one of the biggest names in beauty, one of the biggest beauty influencers on the entire TikTok app. And she didn't blow up because she had the best highlighter recommendation. I mean, just take a look around. There are plenty of people who have good or even great taste when it comes to makeup recommendations and tutorials. No, that's not why Mikayla blew up. She blew up because her audience was invested in her. They believed her, and they believed without a doubt that when Mikayla said something worked, she meant that it worked. And that trust was her whole business model. It was her brand. It was who she was on camera. So Mikayla built a brand that was built entirely on being the real one. And that type of brand messaging only works if there's never a moment where the real thing and the performant thing do not align and match. So the real thing and the performing thing always has to stay consistent for that type of brand to continue to thrive and to work. However, for Mikayla, that gap between real and performance was about to open up, and it would continue to reveal itself over and over and over again for years in ways that extend way further than any mascara. So it took her years to build the audience and build the trust with her audience. And I'm sure that was not an easy process to build that type of trust at all. I mean, as humans, we are naturally skeptical people. So something that took Mikayla years to build took her less than a week to kind of crack open. And that was just the beginning of the crack. And something about cracking is the fact that it is almost impossible to patch it back up once there's a crack. And that was the situation for Mikayla. The first crack didn't get patched, which left her open and exposed and allowed space for even more cracks to happen. So let's talk about that first crack a little bit more. So from what I've been able to collect about the situation, it seemed to be a total normal Tuesday when Mikayla decided to post a sponsored video for a new L'Oreal mascara.
This literally just changed my life. This looks like false. This is how? What? It's this L'Oreal telescopic lift. Look at the wand. Okay, so basically I'm taking the curved side and I'm going root to tip and I'm starting to coat the lashes. And then once you've done that, you flip the brush to the side and you use the hook comb to basically separate. This is one coat. Okay, I'm gonna add a second. Look at the length. Do you see that? I am speechless. And I'm not sure anyone's gonna ever be able to compete with this mascara.
And in the video, she put 2 coats of mascara on. Then she cuts to a profile shot and goes on the video to say, look at the length. This looks like false lashes, which is completely normal for influencers to do it this way, especially since she had done this type of video 1,000 times exactly like this one. Except for this time, within hours of posting the video, people caught something and they started zooming in on her lashes frame by frame, which led them into a frenzy where they called her out, questioning her, saying, that's not mascara, that's false lashes. The audience called out the specific brand of false eyelashes that she was using in the video, named it by name in the comments. Not just one person, but hundreds of people calling her out for the exact same thing that she had accused someone of doing years prior. She did the exact same thing in that moment that helped make her build trust and make her feel real with her audience members. She did the same thing. And of course, what happened? It exploded. 44 million views on that one video. 10.5 million more under the hashtag. Beauty YouTubers stitching it every which way. Jeffree Star weighing in his opinion on it. So this wasn't just a little pushback. It was a full-blown internet trial happening right here in front of Mikayla's face. And it happened freaking overnight. And how did she respond to that?
Well, someone in the comments of the post straight up asked her if she put on false lashes at the end. And she said, no, OMG, L'Oreal would never allow that in a partner post, but y'all proving my point.
She denied it right there in the comments. She said L'Oreal would never allow false lashes in a partnered post. She said it was just 3 or 4 coats of a product. And then look what happened. She just went dark and disappeared from the internet for over a week. She went completely silent on the app where she posted constantly. And she did this for more than a week. She just ghosted her audience. And when she finally came back, she didn't come back with a tearful apology or a big explanation.
I'm sure we all know why we've all gathered here today. It's the month of love, bitches. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not fucking around on Valentine's Day, okay? Like these eyeshadow looks are about to fucking hit. All right, P. Louise, we're coming out the gate. I feel like we gotta do something real fucking sick today. Valentine's Day is right up there with Christmas for me, okay? I'm a hopeless romantic. Hey, if you're a member of the Bad Bitch Beauty Boot Camp, strap the fuck up and get ready to get uncomfortable with this one. We're doing double cut crease, red and pink, and I'm gonna be using the Love Tapes palette from P. Louise, if you're wondering.
She came back with a joke to try to laugh it off with a subtle video poking fun at the whole thing. Like, you guys, you got me. It's fine. Let's just move on type of joke. And I really want to talk about the important part of that type of situation. The part that she didn't address and that no one really spoke about or is speaking about, which is the fact that this situation, it wasn't really about mascara at all or false lashes. This situation was really about her audience testing for the very first time whether the honest girl was actually honest. And we're all human beings. We are all going to slip up in ways. We are all going to make mistakes. But it's what we do after and how we handle the situation after, how we show up from there on out. That's what really makes it an imprint. That's what's really important. That's what really matters. And Mikayla, what she chose to do following that first crack and trust was deny, go quiet, and come back joking. And I want you to think about that because like I said, her entire brand, her entire camera presence was built on trust. And then she broke that trust with her audience. And instead of addressing that fact and that trust and talking about it and talking through it, she pretended basically that it didn't happen, that it was a joke. Let's just brush it off and let's move on. And that right there, that type of reaction, that sticks with people. And that causes people to question a person who has built their entire brand on being the one who tells the truth. How could it not? How could that not change how you look at someone, how you feel about someone, how you view someone? And then simultaneously, while the entire internet was busy arguing about eyelashes, something so much heavier was happening in Mikayla's life that almost nobody knew about and that almost none of these videos or deep dives even talk about. And this is where things get a little bit more serious and we start to move in a little bit more to the psychology of things. And as humans, I know we love gossip and we love juiciness of things, but life is almost never as black and as white as people see it. So, months before the mascara-gate situation ever happened, Mikayla quietly started a second, more private TikTok account. And from what I've collected, she started this more private TikTok account to document something she wasn't ready to say on her main page yet with her millions of people following her. And in the very first video on that more private second account, she looked at the camera and she said that she was struggling. And she said she was struggling badly and that she was struggling with an eating disorder and that she was at a place that her eating disorder, in her own words, was out of control. Here's what I've collected that she has shared since speaking about her eating disorder, which is that while she was in high school, she started following these fitness influencers. And it sounded like she did this as a way for her to try to learn to eat a little cleaner. But from that urge to learn, things got a lot deeper. And it got deeper to the point where she developed an obsession with food rules. And this obsession that she spoke about was an actual diagnosis that we call orthorexia. And she openly speaks about it now. She's also talked about having and struggling with OCD. And when OCD and food control get tangled together, that can get dangerous, and it can get dangerous really fast. And that strict control that her brain kept telling her that she needed to have eventually spiraled into anorexia behaviors. And then it spiraled into bulimic behaviors. And then it became binge cycles that she felt that she could not stop. And here's the thing that I want you to actually understand and to try to step outside of your own formulated opinion of her. Because at the end of the day, she's still a human and she struggles like every other human being. And when someone's inner world, their inner thoughts feel chaotic or scary or completely out of control, then their body will often grab onto one thing that it thinks it can control, which for Mikayla was food, weight, and flawless routine. And the body just doesn't hold onto the thing. It feels like it has to control. It grasps onto it for dear life. Like it is a life raft because that person can literally feel like they are drowning and this is the thing that's going to save them. And having this type of obsession and control and diagnosis isn't about vanity or looks at all. Honestly, it isn't even really about the number on the scale. It's about survival. It's about fight or flight. It's about the nervous system trying to build a floor and some stability to stand on when everything else feels unstable and out of control. Mikayla even talked about her senior year of high school and the fact that her eating disorder got so severe that one binge episode became a genuine medical emergency. She even talked about the fact that her own family didn't fully believe how bad it had gotten, which made it even harder for her to get help. How could that not? Being faced with the possibility of not being believed when you're in a time of need and need help, that's enough to make a person want to suffer in silence. Have you ever faced something like that? The fear of not being believed. So instead of saying it out loud, you just keep it inside. And even though you know you need help. So what did she do with that? She did something pretty remarkable for her age. As a teenager, she did the unbelievably brave thing, and she called 911 herself. And even though she did this and made this brave call out of desperation, maybe even out of shame, she had enough strength and courage and self-awareness to know that she needed real help. Even if no one around her fully saw what she was struggling with or the weight of the struggle yet, she knew, and she did something about it. And that call led into a structured treatment stay the summer before she left home for college. She has since described her eating disorder in her own words as something that she's been fighting for nearly 7 years and has talked about the fact that she has been in and out of treatment the entire time, including the exact years that she was becoming one of the most watched beauty influencers on the internet. So let's just recap all of that for a second, because I know that's a lot and I really want it to sit with you and I really want it to land. And I want you to try to create some understanding before we go any further, because I know as humans, we are so quick to judge and we like to hang on to things. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but what I am saying is that this world is not as black and white as we see it. And creating understanding doesn't excuse people's choices that they make or the impact that their choices has on other people, but it can help us recognize that we are all just humans. So in the exact same years, Mikayla was building a brand on being the one girl who wasn't all about performance and performing for other people, the one who was honest and who would tell you the truth about mascara. She was also privately at war with her own body. She was hiding and battling a decade-long eating disorder behind a full face of flawless glam. And I wouldn't call that hypocrisy. In fact, her battle isn't even about mascara or her brand at all. As a counselor, what I see is just a person who learned a long time before any of us were watching, that control was the only thing that ever made her feel safe. And I think that one fact, her need for control, is going to help explain almost everything else that we talk about in this video, starting with the man that she fell in love with.
Of it being Cody and I's first anniversary this weekend, I figured I would finally share with you the story of the first time we met and how I knew pretty much immediately I was going to spend the rest of my life with this person. For anyone who's maybe new, Cody and I met on Tinder. It's pretty normal these days for people to meet online, especially because Cody and I met during the height of the pandemic. So when I matched with Cody, he had literally no photos of his face. And he had like a few photos of like the side of his face or like really blurry, grainy pictures. And I'm like, this is a red flag. Because if you've been on Tinder, you know it is a freaking jungle. And long story short, my bio said something along the lines of, I'm an asshole looking to date another asshole. And Cody had the most intriguing bio. So that is literally the only reason I swiped on him. Like I said, he really had no photos. And mind you, by the time I matched with Cody, I was so fed up with Tinder. I'm like, I fucking hate this app. This app is so trash. I went on so many horrible dates, had so many horrible experiences on the app. I was so tired of it. And when I matched with Cody and he messaged me, I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to give this the time of day. So this guy sends me a long-ass message. The first thing he says to me, it's a long-ass message, like telling me about himself, saying, how are you doing? I read your bio. You're really pretty. And I'm like, yo. Calm down. He was so like enthusiastic and happy, and I'm like, who are you?
So let's talk about how she actually met him. In December 2020, in the middle of winter, she was on Tinder like everybody else, stuck inside during that pandemic. So apparently Cody messaged her, and she has described the message as enthusiastic. So apparently Cody messages her, and she described the message as enthusiastic, like he was genuinely excited to talk to her. And that struck something in her, because he was not just playing it cool like the way everybody else plays it cool on dating apps. And for the next 3 weeks straight, before they ever met in person, they were continuously texting each other.
So he texts me that he arrives, and I instantly just feel excited to meet him, because he's the first like genuine guy I've matched with on Tinder who isn't just looking to hook up, which is really not what I was interested in. You know, when I matched with him, he told me he had just moved to Mass from Nevada. He didn't really know anybody, and he was looking to get to know someone. So I thought that was really cool. So this was like the most life-changing moment for me when he texted me that he packed the car and he was coming up the stairs to my apartment that I lived in. And I opened the door, and I didn't really know what he looked like, remember? Because he didn't have a lot of photos of himself on Tinder. He had these really shitty photos, and we didn't FaceTime, we didn't Snapchat, we didn't really do much of anything. So I didn't really have the best idea of what he looked like. But I opened the door, and he's walking up the stairs, and he has, you guys see it in my videos, he has this big, charming, cheeky smile. And I look at him walking up the stairs, and I see that smile, and oh my fucking God. I get hit by Cupid's arrow. Seriously. He is smiling so big. He's just and he's so tall. He's 6'1". He's handsome. And I'm like, who are you? And he just had this energy. He had this insane energy that was so full of love and happiness. And I'm like, this man, I'm about to like fall in love with this man. And also, I'd been in lots of relationships and dated, and even long-term 2-3 year relationships, and I had never fallen in love because I was never with the right person. And I felt love the day I met Cody.
And then on January 23rd, 2021, she remembered and shared the exact date that she met Cody, which that in itself tells you something. So on that day, he came over to her apartment, and they ordered dinner, and he ends up helping her put together furniture, of all things, on their first time of meeting each other. She went on to describe his energy that night as the energy of a person who was full of love and happiness. And she said flat out, she'd never been in love like this before, at least not like this, what she felt then. And when there's a cute meet cute type of story, it's easy to miss some of the important details. So here's the part of the cute meat story that carries some weight, and the part that I need you to let sink in, which is the fact that when Cody and Mikayla met, Cody was actually living in a sober living facility, meaning that he had just gotten out of rehab.
A lot of you know that Cody's from Nevada. He's only lived in Massachusetts for a couple of years. And I get asked all the time, how the hell did Cody end up in Massachusetts? Well, I'm finally going to answer that question. Cody is actually a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. So here's what happened. After many, many years of struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, Cody hit a rock bottom and he was homeless. All he had was a really old beaten down truck that he had bought with a couple $1,000s, and he began living in it. All he would do every day is drink bottles and bottles of alcohol and take drugs until he could feel numb. And I think when Cody became homeless, for him that was really, I need fucking help, you know? So he actually called a hotline number that he heard on the radio or whatever for drug and alcohol use. And they shipped him out to Massachusetts because Massachusetts has some of the best healthcare. And he went to rehab and treatment for quite a long time. And he got sober. And Cody has been sober for over 2 years. And as a team, as partners, we work on his sobriety every single day. And that is actually a reason him and I related a lot when we first met. Because I struggle with an eating disorder. He struggles with drugs and alcohol. And we understood each other's struggles a lot. Where am I going with this? Well, when Cody came up to Massachusetts, he came with only one thing. That truck. He didn't have anything else. He had lost everything to drugs and alcohol. All he had was that truck. And that truck meant a lot to him because it was a reminder of why he wanted to change his life. Cody was so certain that he wanted to marry me that he sold the only thing he had, that truck, to buy an engagement ring. The most important thing to him, that truck, it transferred over to me. I became the most important thing in his life.
In fact, according to the information that I've collected, he actually moved all the way from Nevada to Massachusetts to get treatment. And in her own words, she said the only reason that he stayed, the only reason that Cody stayed in Massachusetts at all once his treatment ended was because of her. So let's let that land for a second. Because from the very first chapter of this relationship between Mikayla and Cody, Mikayla wasn't just falling in love with the person. And what I see as a counselor in this situation is that she was becoming in real time the reason someone was choosing to stay sober and to stay in the state at all. And that's not a small detail or small role for someone to hold on at the very start of something new. That's an enormous and heavy detail and role to hold on to, especially in such a new relationship.
I'll tell you about how Cody proposed to me and just the whole weekend. So yeah, Cody proposed to me on November 20th, and I hid it for a few days so I could tell my family and friends first. Also, just so I could enjoy the moment offline, I wasn't on my phone for like 3-4 days. So like I said, the night before, Cody told me to pack a suitcase for 3 days. So that's exactly what I did. He told me nothing else, gave me no additional details. He just said, pack a suitcase for 3 days, we're going somewhere. He also said, dress nice. So I dressed nice. So we hop in the car, he put something on the GPS, and we end up arriving at Mandarin Oriental Hotel, which is a very nice hotel in Boston, and it was actually the first hotel we stayed at our first date in Boston. So super sweet. We get to the hotel room, and he gets us this probably the most expensive room in the freaking hotel. It was like massive and it looked like a freaking apartment. It was beautiful. There was some white roses on the table he had gifted me and some, a nice like fruit tray. It was very romantic. And then he's like, all right, we gotta go for a walk. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So I'm not asking any questions. I'm just kind of going with it, right? So we walk to the Boston Commons, the Public Garden, which is the place we had our first date at in Boston. And so it was very sweet of him to want to like recreate that moment. Cody knows me so well that he literally knew that would be exactly what I wanted, So then we sit down at the same bench that we sat at that first date. I could not believe he remembered the bench. And he starts just right away giving this beautiful freaking speech. Oh my God, it was so sweet. He's an angel. It's such a beautiful day. He gets on one knee. I'm holding his hand. because I'm so nervous for him. And then he, of course, asks me to marry him. And I absolutely said yes.
And then, less than a year after January 23rd, 2021, the first date meeting, Cody proposed. And Mikayla, she said yes, obviously. And she posted the whole story on TikTok days later, detailing the entire situation. And then July 1st, 2023, they got married at Castle Hill Inn in Rhode Island. And the wedding was big enough and she was famous enough that People magazine covered it exclusively. And from the outside, people see and hear this and they think, wow, this is like a fairy tale situation, movie style fairy tale, where the guy gets sober, he meets the girl, and he builds a whole new life around her. It's the kind of love story that gets talked about over and over again, that yields a lot of attention, that gets shared over and over again. But I want you to remember something that we talked about earlier, back in the beginning of the video, which is the fact that control for Mikayla has always been about safety. That control helped her feel safe. And as a counselor, knowing that fact about her need for control, it leads me to thinking that it's not a coincidence that her relationship with Cody, the one that she built her whole future around, was the one from day one that a piece of someone else's stability quietly depended on her too. His stability quietly depended on her too. Where she entered into a forever future with someone that trapped her into a cycle where she must remain perfectly in control to keep both her husband stable and her own hidden anxieties from collapsing the marriage. So to keep them both stable, that she had to work on that. And a relationship that starts with, he stayed because of X, Y, and Z, it's a beautiful thing to say when everything else is going well, but it becomes something else entirely the moment that things aren't going well. And this is life. There will always be moments where things are hard and things are not going to go according to plan. And that's exactly the situation in Mikayla's case. And that's exactly the situation in Mikayla's case. And I need to say this next part we talk about, it's heavy. So throughout 2025, people started noticing that Cody had basically vanished from Mikayla's content.
She forgot about Cody again? I find this very odd. Do you bring your husband to work with you? Like, I just don't understand. I'm in Korea for work. I'm in labs all day long formulating makeup. Why does Cody have to be here? Like, I'm serious. You realize the man has a job. Like, a job? I know you think I don't have a real job, but Cody has a real 9 to 5. He gets 2 weeks vacation time every year. He can't just come with me to everything. I'm not understanding what we don't get here. It's every single video, every time I travel. She forgot about Cody. Where's Cody? She's a horrible wife. Enough. Can you guys just fucking stop?
There was no explanation, just he was gone. And when people watch your story so closely, when they watch your life so closely because you're so open about it, like people do in Mikayla's situation, then silence like that, it doesn't stay silent for long. And people will start talking and they will create their own meaning and they will jump to conclusions. And that is exactly what happened. People started creating speculation almost immediately in Cody's absence. And then she was finally ready to share with her audience that her husband, Cody, had relapsed.
Husband Cody is in rehab, and I am ready to talk about it. Cody's story is not mine to share, but he has given me his blessing to talk about it today. I want to start off by saying I am incredibly proud of Cody. It takes an immense amount of courage to give up your will and enter treatment, and I could not be more proud. As many of you have noticed, for the last several months, Cody really has not been around, and now you know why. A lot of you have put 2 and 2 together. Many of my longtime loyal followers, Cody being an addict is not news. He has shared his story openly on TikTok. Cody has struggled with addiction from a very young age, and I knew Cody was an addict when I met him. When I met him, he was living in sober living, and he had just gotten out of rehab. He moved from Nevada to Massachusetts to go to treatment here, and the only reason he stayed is because he met me.
She shared his first relapse on drugs in January 2024, then on alcohol about 4 months later, that there were 2 separate relapses in less than half a year. Could you imagine being faced with that after everything that they built?
I made a valiant effort this year to make sure absolutely no one knew that this year has been the worst year of my life.
And I want you to really hear what she just said there, because I don't think it's a line that should just be skipped over or ignored. She admitted that for an entire year, while she was still posting glam tutorials, while she was still smiling for brand deals, while she was still being the girl the internet expects to see, she was privately watching the person she built a whole life around disappear right in front of her. She said it herself, that she didn't know who that person wasn't anymore, that she felt like she'd lost her husband while he was still alive, still in the house, still technically hers, grieving someone who was still alive and still there, who was still her husband. Yes, I said grieving someone who was still there.
Relapsing is a part of the recovery process, not a failure. January 2024, my husband relapsed on drugs. In April 2024, my husband relapsed on alcohol. I am not new to addiction or addicts, but what I am new to is marrying one. And putting on a brave face the entire year of 2024 was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. There's a reason addiction is known as a family disease, because it doesn't just impact the individual, it impacts everyone around them. 2024, I faced some of the scariest nights of my life. I'm talking calling the police because I'm scared my husband's gonna die.
She has said in that clip directly that some of those nights involved calling the police because she was afraid her husband wasn't going to survive the night. And that it's not just something you can shrug off as in a metaphor of some sort, that it's a real situation and that a real woman faced alone in a house trying to decide and to make a phone call that most of us pray that we never have to make. And eventually she made the decision to remove Cody from their home. But there's a detail in that decision that's very telling, which is the fact that she secretly kept a key to his apartment. The fact that she came to the conclusion that the healthiest thing for her and maybe for him was to remove him from their home. But even in making that decision, she kept a key to his apartment secretly by way out of fear, just in case he overdosed and there was no one else who could get to him in time, that she would have a key to access him to potentially save him. Let that land, the weight of that, let it sit with you. The toll of taking something like that on, carrying that fear and anxiety, just in case I have to have access so I can potentially save him. I want you to really think about what it actually takes to hold both of those things at once. Setting a boundary that's firm enough to make your husband leave the house and still loving him carefully enough to keep a secret way back in just in case love wasn't enough to keep him alive. And those two truths are not a contradiction. Holding both of those things at the same time is what it looks like when someone refuses to stop and give up trying to keep another person safe, even after they've already accepted that they can't control the outcome for that person.
The question is, what's next? Support however long Cody wants to and needs to be in rehab. Cody gets out, I am waiting for him with open arms.
And so he did go to rehab and he entered into a 45-day program. And when he came home, she posted about it. And it sounds like genuine hard-won pride. It didn't seem like performative positivity, at least not to me. It genuinely sounded to me like real relief that the person she loved had chosen to fight for himself.
Last week, Cody hit 3 months of sobriety, and anyone who has been through addiction or knows someone who's going through addiction knows exactly how incredible of an accomplishment that is. Cody and I are going to marriage counseling, which, no, not because we're getting a divorce. It's just nice to go to marriage counseling when you go through a very traumatic, stressful situation together. It helps, okay?
And by that summer, Mikayla talked about the fact that Cody had 3 months of sobriety, that they were in marriage counseling, which she'd made sure to point out the fact that they were in marriage counseling wasn't a sign that they were falling apart. It was just a tool that they were using to help them navigate the after effects of living through something that traumatic together. And you know what? I believe her. Honestly, I do. I think at that point in time, when she was sharing all of that life update with her audience, I believe that she really did believe that they were going to make it, which is exactly what makes what happens next so much harder to watch, let alone for the person who's actually living through it. Because somewhere in the months right after that TikTok video she posted, quietly, privately, off camera, something shifted in their relationship and in her life. And by the time she came back and was ready to tell her audience about it, she wasn't just announcing a divorce. She was trying to control very deliberately exactly how much of this story the rest of us were allowed to have and how we should view and even talk about her story in that situation. So on February 12th, 2026, Mikayla sits down and tells her millions of followers that she and Cody are getting a divorce. And I want you to actually notice how carefully she does this, because I don't think it's an accident. I think she is carefully and strategically thought about what she was going to say before she hit the record button.
Start this video by saying, I appreciate you and I love you, and you're gonna wanna sit down for this video. I am getting a divorce. Take a minute, take it in. I am getting a divorce. Cody and I love each other so much. We love each other so much. We would do literally anything for each other. I want you to know that. I'm not going to be sharing any details whatsoever as to why Cody and I have made this decision. The main reason I am doing that is because I want to protect Cody. Cody deserves that. We both want to heal. Cody deserves to be happy. Cody deserves to be happy. So do I.
And as you can see, she doesn't give a reason. She just says straight to the camera that this is extremely crappy thing. No one gets married to get a divorce. She went on to say Cody deserves to be happy. She says she does too. And then she said something that stopped me and had me really thinking. She said, Cody and I are in this together. So please do not pull us apart.
One thing I want to ask is, Cody and I are in this together. And I see a lot of times when people get a divorce or separate, people try to pit people against each other, pick sides. I'm asking you not to do that. Cody and I are in this together. Please don't pull us apart. Second thing I'm gonna ask is, Cody and I have been very open about his struggles with addiction. And I'm going to ask you if you can please leave that out of the conversation. They are two separate things.
And then she does something even more specific. She directly asks her audience not to connect the divorce to his addiction, not to assume one caused the other. She says it plainly. Those are two separate things. And it's already hard enough being an addict without the whole internet turning your divorce into proof that you failed. And as a counselor, what I'm seeing is a woman getting on camera and doing damage control for someone else's dignity while she's in the middle of the worst week of her own freaking life. And I want you to just think about how much composure that actually takes to get in front of millions, holding it together, asking for people to respect her soon-to-be ex-husband while grieving the loss and pain of that same person, of her marriage at the same time.
Well, the reason I'm pretty put together in this video is because we made this decision last year. And I've spent the last few months processing this, a lot of crying, a lot of
talking to family, friends, therapy, everything you can think of.
And she goes on to tell us the decision itself wasn't made that day, that it had been made months earlier, back in 2025, that it was made quietly, that it was made privately, while she was still posting normal content, while she was still getting on camera and performing, while she was still being Mikayla, the beauty influencer for all of us to sit and watch. She spent months crying, talking to people close to her, sitting in therapy before she ever let public see a single crack in her world. And I want you again to remember earlier when we talked about how control has always been Mikayla's version of safety. Just look at how control was at play in that TikTok video that she posted. It was control in one of the most sophisticated forms that she had ever posted, because she didn't just process a divorce on her own quietly without her millions of followers and knowing what was happening at the same time. And with a smile on her face through it all, she also managed the exact moment, the exact words, and the exact boundaries of what the rest of us were allowed to know, to say, to think, all before she even pressed post.
Girls are doing pink for a theme. We all have our own sash. Mine is iconic, I fear.
And then, only days after that video, she's out with her friends in a custom sash that says single and sexy, laughing, saying it's iconic, which on the surface looks like a total freaking whiplash because it's grief one week, then glitter and glam the next. But here's why, as a counselor, I don't think it's a contradiction at all. Why I don't think it's her being fake. Because once you know everything we already know about her, the fact that Mikayla doesn't seem to sit still inside of pain, and that she never really has. She did not with the eating disorder, not with Cody's addiction, and definitely she's not going to do it now, because what I see is that the second something hurts, some part of her reaches for the next controllable, active thing to do with her hands. And grieving quietly in private and then getting dressed up in a sash 5 days later, those aren't opposite things. They're actually the exact same coping strategy, just wearing two different outfits. They are both methods of functioning and also carrying on in life. And if reaching for the next active thing is a kind of bulldozing through it, genuinely how she survives hard weeks, then I'm sure you can probably already guess what's about to happen next. And what happens next happened a lot faster than anyone expected, which, as you can guess, caused an internet freaking frenzy.
If I even wanted to share that I'm going on a date, but I'm in my fucking era, so I don't give a shit.
So, less than a month after the divorce announcement, Mikayla posted a get ready with me, half joking that she's in a F it type of era, getting ready for a date. And when you watch that video, it's like you practically feel her deciding in real time that she's allowed to want something good again.
Many of you have found out that I am dating my high school sweetheart.
And then 2 weeks later, that's only 2 weeks, she actually confirms it. She confirms that she's dating her high school sweetheart. She doesn't show his face yet, doesn't say his name yet, just tells us it's a long story and she'll tell us about it eventually.
I'm just excited, and I'm happy to share with you that I am so happy in my current relationship that I am in. And I get that a lot of people are like confused about the timeline and don't understand, and that's fine, that's fine. You don't have to understand everything. You can just be happy for me.
And in her own words, right here, are honestly kind of perfect, because she says she doesn't expect anyone to understand it because it came out of nowhere for her too. That 10 years later, out of absolutely nowhere, the boy from high school is back. And by April, the internet had already figured out who he was. So what did she do? She just posted the photos herself, which is practical to her need for control in the end, by controlling the reveal on her own terms rather than letting the internet do it for her. And then May rolled around and she finally tells the story that her boyfriend's name is Zach, that they dated in high school, that she went to college, and that he went into the military. And somewhere in all of that, life pulled them apart. But they never really actually let go of each other. That it was 10 years of just still being there, still caring, long after most people would have just moved on completely. Okay, and Mikayla says something in one of her videos. She said that he makes my central nervous system so calm.
What I can tell you is I have never been this happy in a relationship in my life. But honestly, I've learned it's a lot more than just happiness. It's also, this man makes my central nervous system so calm.
And I need you to actually sit with that phrase, because out of every single thing she said across this entire story of them two, this might be the most important thing that she has said about him and about their relationship. So take note. She didn't say that he makes her happy. She didn't say that he's exciting or romantic or a good time. She said that he makes her nervous system calm. And I really want you to think about what that actually means, especially coming from her, coming from this woman who spent years white knuckle in control over food because her body needed something stable to hold on. And coming from a woman who fell in love with a man in early recovery and quietly took on the job of keeping him alive. Coming from a woman who managed a divorce announcement word by word so the internet couldn't run away with the story. And when we look at the entirety of the picture, every single relationship to safety she's had in her whole adult life has involved work, vigilance, managing something, holding something together. And then here comes Zach, someone who existed before any of it, before the fame, before the addiction crisis, before the eating disorder even got its claws all the way in. Someone who isn't a project to her, someone who isn't in a crisis for her to manage, someone who isn't a story she has to carefully control the reveal of. Zach has just been someone who's been quietly, privately there in the background the entire time. And for someone whose entire nervous system has been on duty and activated for years, then feeling that sense of calm, it isn't boring. That feeling of calm might actually be the single most romantic thing that anyone could ever offer her. And that's the piece that I think ties this entire story together, that ties the mascara-gate, the eating disorder, Cody, the divorce, and now Zach all together. Because really every single one of these moments in Mikayla's life has actually been about the exact same thing. And it's time that we finally name it all the way out loud. Okay, in order to name it, let's zoom out a little. And I want you to try to look at all 5 of those moments side by side. So let's run through it. A woman gets accused of faking lashes, and instead of falling apart, she manages it. She denies it. She goes quiet, and she controls exactly when and how she comes back. Then we have that same exact woman as a teenage girl who feels like her entire life is spinning. And because of this, she grabs onto the one thing that she thinks she can control completely, which is food, and holds onto it so tight that it becomes a disorder that cost her almost a decade of her life. Then we have that same woman who falls in love with a man who's in early recovery. And without even ever being asked to, she takes on the actual physical job of keeping him alive, with keeping a secret key, placing a phone call to the police, and making a decision about whether he stays in the house or not. Then you have that same woman in a marriage that ends, and she doesn't let herself fall apart on camera with that ending. Instead, she manages the exact words, the exact framing, months of private processing before a single public appearance. And then finally, you have that same woman meet someone who asks nothing of her to manage at all. And the only way she describes how that feeling feels, that feeling of not caring and managing it at all, is that her central nervous system goes calm. Could you imagine controlling and managing everything and finally being able to put that down? How that feeling has to feel? Of course, that would create a sense of calm that sounds like she's never really felt, that just sounds amazing and beautiful. And what all 5 of those moments share underneath everything is what counselors sometimes call hypervigilance, which is used as a survival strategy. And it happens when the nervous system learns, usually very early on in life, that safety is not something that you are just given. That safety is something that you have to build yourself constantly with your own two hands. And if you don't do this continuously, then it just disappears. And once that lesson gets learned deeply enough, once it's ingrained in you, it doesn't just show up in one part of someone's life. It shows up everywhere in their life. It shows up in how they handle their body and who they fall in love with and how they manage a scandal and how they announce a divorce. Because control in this form, seen in Mikayla, isn't a personality quirk. That control she exhibits is her entire operating system. It's how she functions. And I think that's why mascara-gate cuts so deep in the first place. If you just really take a step back and you think about it, her whole public identity of being the real one, the honest one, the one who would never perform for you, I don't think it's about marketing choice. I think as a counselor, what I see is that the real one and honest one marketing strategy that she employed is the same hypervigilance and it's the same control system, but it's all just aimed outward instead of it being inward. Because if she could control how truthful people believed her to be, then that was one more piece of the world she didn't have to leave up for chance. Hypervigilance control right there. Which, when you think about it in that way, it's what makes Zach land so hard, especially once you understand everything underneath it. It's not that he's more exciting than anyone else or more romantic on paper than anyone else. It's that for the first time in her entire adult life, she met someone who didn't require her to manage everything at all or anything at all. That didn't require her to manage the sobriety, not his stability, not the story. He was just him, already there, already steady, asking nothing of her except to let herself be loved by him. And for a woman whose entire body has been on high alert since high school, could you imagine? That's not small at all. That's huge in her messy life story. And that might be the single healthiest thing that has ever happened to her. And honestly, if you might have built your life around managing something like your body, your partner, your image, your own safety, and you did this because somewhere along the way you learned that nobody else is going to do it for you, well, then honestly, this story is about you too. So let me ask you something about yourself. And I want you to really think about this. Is there something in your life right now that you manage instead of actually feeling? Something that you control, like your body or your weight or someone else's mood, someone else's sobriety, your image, how you put together you look to the outside world. And you do this not because you love the control itself, but because some part of you learned. And you learned this a long time ago, that if you didn't hold it together, then nobody else would. So you have to be that one. Because what I see in Mikayla's story, underneath the mascara and the ex-boyfriend from 10 years ago, how exhausting that it must be to be your own safety net, to be the one who has to notice everything, who has to manage everything, who has to hold everything together. And the road that led Mikayla there is probably very similar to the road that led you there as well. Which is the fact that somewhere back at the beginning, when you were younger, safety wasn't just handed to you the way that it's supposed to be when you were a child. Instead, you had to go build it yourself. And once you learn that lesson, your body learns that lesson, the lesson never fully stops running in the background. And I think that's exactly why when Mikayla says, he makes my nervous system calm, it hits so many of you so hard. It hit me hard. Because most of us aren't looking for exciting anymore. We're looking for the one place where we finally get to put the vigilance down and to just live. And if you're the person in your friend group who's always managing everyone else's crisis, or if you're the one holding a relationship together with both hands while telling everyone else, I'm fine. Or if your control over your body or your image or your story has quietly become the only place that you feel safe at all, only place like you feel like you have some sense of control, then I don't think that it makes you broken. I think it makes you someone who has learned to survive a long time before anyone taught you how to actually just rest. And that's not a personality trait or a character defect or a flaw. It's learned behavior that can be unlearned and that can be changed. And honestly, that change starts with creating some emotional wealth. So if any part of Mikayla's story, or at least the part of her story that's happening underneath the surface, felt a little too familiar, the managing, the vigilance, the exhaustion of always being the one holding it together, then I want you to know that's not something that you have to carry alone. And it's definitely not something that you have to keep proving you can handle by yourself. So sit with that. Think about that, because that's something worth understanding and working on gently, on purpose, with someone in your corner. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.